The rain began on a Monday, not with a dramatic thunderclap, but with a sigh, a gentle weeping from heavy gray clouds that seemed to press down on the rooftops of Elmwood Street. Arthur Henderson watched the first drops trace crooked paths down his windowpane inside his small, tidy cottage. The silence felt heavier than usual, amplified by the soft drumming on the roof. He hadn't spoken to anyone properly since his wife, Eleanor, passed away last autumn. The rain felt like a curtain drawn between his house and the world, a confirmation of the quiet isolation he'd settled into. He made tea, the familiar ritual offering little comfort against the encroaching damp and the hollow echo in his chest where laughter used to reside. Outside, the street blurred into watery watercolors, and the world shrank to the four walls holding his memories. Tuesday brought no respite, only a deepening gray and a steady, insistent downpour that turned the garden path into a muddy stream. Arthur noticed Mrs. Callahan, his sprightly but elderly neighbor across the street, struggling mightily with her overflowing bins, her bright yellow raincoat a smudge of defiance against the gloom. Without truly thinking, Arthur grabbed his own worn coat and sturdy boots. He crossed the street, the rain instantly soaking his shoulders, and wordlessly took the heavy bin from her trembling hands, dragging it back to its proper place against her fence. Mrs. Callahan's surprised gratitude, shouted over the rain's din, was a warmth he hadn't felt in months. A simple, "Thank you, Arthur," carried more weight than 1,000 condolences. By Wednesday, the rain had become a constant companion, a rhythmic backdrop to a changed street. Puddles merged into miniature lakes on the pavement. It was then young Leo Martinez, struggling home from school under a backpack twice his size and a flimsy plastic bag held over his head, slipped on the slick curb right outside Arthur's gate. Books and papers scattered into a muddy rivulet. Arthur saw it happen. Instinct propelled him out his door again. Large black umbrella in hand, he held it steadfastly over Leo while the boy scrambled to rescue his sodden homework. "Come on, lad," Arthur said, his voice rough with disuse. "Let's get you and these books under proper cover." He guided Leo to his porch, fetched a towel, and helped dry the least damaged pages. The simple act of tending to another's small disaster momentarily lifting the fog of his own sorrow. Thursday dawned, if one could call the dim, rain-lashed grayness dawn, with a new problem. The relentless downpour found a weakness in Mrs. Callahan's roof. A distinct drip 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 became a steady stream into her living room bucket. Arthur heard her distressed mutterings from his kitchen window. He remembered his toolbox, dusty in the shed with more determination than skill. He wrestled his ladder through the downpour and patched the leaky shingle as best he could, the icy rain stinging his face and hands later. Soaked and shivering but strangely invigorated, he sat in Mrs. Callahan's warm kitchen, sipping strong, sweet tea she insisted on making, listening to tales of her childhood floods. The shared warmth, physical and emotional, was a powerful antidote to the chill outside. And within Friday's rain was torrential, turning Elmwood Street into a shallow, fast-flowing river. News came that the small bridge at the end of the lane was nearly impassable, cutting off easy access to the main road. A flicker of worry ignited in Arthur, not just for himself, but for Leo's mother working late, for Mr. Evans down the street who relied on deliveries. He lit a fire in his rarely used hearth, its crackle a comforting counterpoint to the storm's roar. Then he did something unexpected. He put the big kettle on, found some biscuits, and opened his front door, calling out into the rain to Mrs. Callahan and Mr. Evans, offering shelter and warmth. Hesitantly, then gratefully, they came. The small cottage, silent for so long, filled with the low murmur of conversation and the shared, unspoken understanding of weathering a storm together. Saturday, the 6th day, felt like the peak of the deluge. The wind howled, driving the rain sideways. Power flickered and died, plunging the street into a damp, gray twilight. Arthur's meager fire became a beacon. Leo and his mother arrived, bearing candles and tinned soup. Mr. Evans brought firewood he'd been saving. Mrs. Callahan produced miraculously dry knitting and stories. Huddled around the firelight in Arthur's living room, sharing simple food and pooled resources, the boundaries between neighbors dissolved. They were simply people, bound together by the relentless weather and a newfound reliance on one another. Arthur listened to Leo's school stories, offered quiet advice to Mr. Evans about his garden, and felt a fragile sense of belonging stitch itself back into his heart. The rain outside was a force, but the warmth inside was a quiet revolution. On the 7th day, Sunday, the rain softened. It was no longer a battering ram, but a gentle, persistent shower washing the world clean. The clouds began to fray at the edges, revealing glimpses of a pale, watery blue. The neighbors, emerging cautiously from their homes, surveyed the transformed street. Muddy, littered with small branches, but intact. They gathered on Arthur's porch, not needing words, just sharing the space and the sight of the receding waters. Leo pointed excitedly at a rainbow beginning to arc over the drenched rooftops. Mrs. Callahan patted Arthur's arm. "We made it through, Arthur," she said softly. He nodded, looking not just at the rainbow, but at the faces around him. The rain had forced cracks in their isolation, and through those cracks, kindness had poured in, filling the emptiness he'd carried for so long. As the last raindrops fell, the sun finally broke through properly, warm and golden, setting the wet world glittering like 1,000 scattered diamonds. The air smelled incredibly fresh, of damp earth and new beginnings. Arthur stood on his porch, breathing it in deeply. The ache for Eleanor was still there, a familiar shape within him, but it no longer filled every corner. It shared space now with the memory of shared umbrellas, mended roofs, a crowded firelit room, and the quiet strength found in unexpected community. The 7 days of rain hadn't just soaked the earth. They had washed something clean in Arthur too. He smiled, a small, genuine thing, feeling the sun warm his face, ready to step out onto the glistening street, no longer alone.